Which is better, the Samsung Galaxy A21 or the Motorola Moto G Power? Well, in this video, we're gonna find out. Hi everyone, this is Kevin here, coming at you with my comparison between the Samsung Galaxy A21 versus the Moto G Power. Now, both of these devices are currently available at a variety of different carriers. Now, they do technically have the same MSRP, but I know that the various carriers are running different promotions on both phones, so definitely make sure to go over to the carrier's website to see what deals are currently being offered. But these two devices definitely do compete against each other, and I know that there's a lot of people out there that when they're looking to buy a budget smartphone, they will be cross-shopping these two phones. Now, with the Samsung Galaxy A21, we're getting a very large 6.5-inch display. Now, the display with the Moto G Power is also large, but slightly smaller at 6.4 inches. But you can see when holding these two phones up next to each other, without a doubt, the A21 is the larger phone of the two, and that is due to it having a larger display, but also a larger bezel at the bottom. But both phones do feature very large displays though, so if that is something that you're looking for, then I think both of these devices will definitely fit your criteria. Now, the displays on the phones are both IPS LCD. However, with the A21, the display is 720p compared to 1080p with the Moto G Power. So we're getting a PPI with the A21 of 270 compared to a PPI of 399 with the G Power. Another difference is that with the A21, we're getting a 20:9 aspect ratio, so a more narrow but taller form factor, whereas with the Moto G Power, it's 19:9, which is also tall and narrow, but a little bit on the wider side compared to the A21. Now, out of those two aspect ratios, I don't really have a preference since both of them fit the form factor that I prefer. But another thing to keep in mind is that with the A21, we're getting a 79.3% screen to body ratio compared to a decently better 83% screen to body ratio with the Moto G Power. And again, that is due to the Moto G Power having the smaller bezels overall. Now, up top here, you can see that with both phones, we are getting hole punches for the front-facing cameras, and that's definitely awesome. The hole punch is situated off to the top left on both phones. So in general, they both do have a very similar form factor here. But with the A21, we're getting a 13 megapixel front-facing camera, compared to the G Power where we're getting a 16 megapixel front-facing camera. Another difference with these two phones is the amount of internal storage that you get. So with the Samsung Galaxy A21, we're getting 32 gigabytes of internal storage with microSD card expansion. And with the Moto G Power, we're getting twice that at 64 gigabytes of internal storage, and we do of course get microSD card expansion as well. So I really do applaud Motorola for giving us twice the amount of internal storage with the Moto G Power compared to the A21, as I'm always a big fan of having a lot of internal storage. Now, neither of these two phones feature wireless charging, but they do both have fingerprint sensors on the back. So we'll give those a try right now. We'll start with the Galaxy A21. Very fast there with the fingerprint sensor. And now the Moto G Power. And that was very quick as well. Now, one benefit that the Galaxy A21 does offer is that we are getting face unlock, whereas with the Moto G Power, there is no face unlock. So if that's a feature that you do like to use, then just know that out of these two phones, only the A21 has it. Now, also on the back of both devices are the camera modules. So with the Samsung Galaxy A21, we're getting a quad camera setup. So we're getting a 16 megapixel main camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle camera, a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera, and a 2 megapixel macro camera. And with the Moto G Power, we're getting a triple camera setup with a 16 megapixel main camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle camera, and a 2 megapixel macro camera. So with the Moto G Power, the macro camera does double as the depth sensing camera. So really, even though you are getting an extra camera with the A21, you're not really getting any additional features out of it. Now, with both of these phones, you are getting portrait mode with the front-facing camera as well. That's very awesome. I know that a lot of people like to take portrait photos and have those nice blurred out backgrounds. And in general, I'd say expect to get better photo and video quality from the front-facing camera with the Moto G Power compared to the A21. Now we'll flip over to the rear cameras on both devices. Let's flip around. And here's how things look with the standard cameras on both phones. So one of the cool features with the Moto G Power is that when you get close up to an object, you do get an alert here that recommends that you switch over to the macro camera. So that's really great. And now you can see that you can take very close up macro photos. And with the A21, we do have the macro camera, but when you get close up to the object, it doesn't give you an alert or recommendation to use the macro camera. Instead, you do have to manually go over to the More tab and then choose the macro camera. And then from there, you can take your macro photos. Now that might not seem like a big difference or a big deal when comparing these two phones, but I know that realistically, you're probably going to oftentimes forget to go over to the macro camera specifically. So I do think that's a really nice thing that Motorola gave us here with that recommendation of switching to the macro camera, as in reality, that probably will result in you using it a bit more often. And then finally, I want to show you how things look with the ultra wide angle camera. So with the Galaxy A21, you can access that by tapping on the button on the left with the three trees. And then with Moto G Power, the ultra wide angle camera is located on the left side. Just tap on the other dot here, and that'll switch you over to 0.5x. So you can see with the ultra-wide cameras on both phones, you do fit a lot more content into the frame. And again, I just feel like in general, and also based on the various photos that I've already taken in the past, the Moto G Power does give you better photo and video quality compared to the A21. So if you are someone that's really looking to get a device with great cameras, and also let me clarify, that's not saying that the A21 has bad cameras, but the cameras on the Moto G Power are certainly a lot better. But definitely if camera quality is important to you, I would say the Moto G Power is the better choice of the two. Now internally, with the Samsung Galaxy A21, we're getting 3 GB of RAM, compared to 4 GB of RAM with the Moto G Power. And then, with the A21, we're getting the MediaTek Helio P35 processor, and with the Moto G Power, we're getting the Qualcomm Snapdragon 665. Now, I've got to say, the Moto G Power is certainly a lot more powerful than the A21. And the word power in the name isn't even due to the phone being powerful, it's due to the battery, but it's powerful in both ways. So I did run a benchmark test with both phones, and you can see that there are some very significant differences here. So with the A21, I got a single core score of 167 compared to a single core score of 304 with the Moto G Power. And then the multi-core score is also a bit different as well, with an overall score of 1003 with the A21 and an overall score of 1309 with the Moto G Power. So not only do the benchmark scores here indicate that the Moto G Power is a lot more powerful than the A21, but also based on my own personal experiences of using both phones, I can confidently tell you that you're going to be getting way better performance with the Moto G Power. I'm really actually pretty amazed that Samsung gave us the P35 with the A21 because I feel like that's not nearly as powerful of a processor as I would have expected with this phone. Now let me clarify though, the processor with the A21 is still good enough that you can use this phone with no issues. It's just that the Moto G Power gives you a much better processor, and really it's better in all ways, so keep that in mind. Now video recording is also different with these two phones. So with the A21, video recording maxes out at 1080p, but with the Moto G Power, you can actually take video at up to 4K with the rear camera and 1080p with the front. So the fact that you get 4K with this phone and no 4K with this phone is another big difference between these two devices. Another difference is the battery capacity. So with the Galaxy A21, we're getting a beefy 4,000 mAh internal battery with 15 watt fast charging. And with the Moto G Power, we're getting an even bigger battery at 5,000 mAh, but we do have a little bit of a lower charging speed at 10 watts. Now on the software side of things, both phones do run Android 10. However, with the A21, we are getting Samsung's skin here called One UI 2.0. Whereas the Moto G Power does run a near stock variant of Android 10. Now that we've compared the major specifications of these two devices, let's compare the hardware. Now I already talked quite a bit about the front panels here, and you can see that in general we are getting thinner bezels with the Moto G Power, but with that being said, I don't feel like the A21 looks bad. I think both phones do look nice, which is definitely good. Another thing that I do want to mention is that you can see here with the A21 by default, we do get the standard 3-button Android navigation, and with the Moto G Power, we get gesture navigation. Now you can go into the settings and you can get gestures with the A21, or you can get the 3-button layout with the Moto G Power. It's really easy. Just go into the settings and search up navigation. Somebody recently sent me an email about the Moto G Power telling me that they regretted their purchase because they don't like the gesture navigation. Now all they had to do to fix their problem was just to go to the settings and type in navigation and make that adjustment. So I told them about that, and they ended up changing their mind about returning the phone. But either Motorola needs to do a better job at letting people know that they can easily switch out these buttons to the standard 3-button navigation, or they need to make it the default. Now, I personally do like the gesture navigation, but I do know that there are a lot of people out there, and it's typically the people that are not as technologically advanced when it comes to smartphones that will see the gesture navigation, be really confused, and then potentially return the device. So I know that most people that are watching this video already know that you can change that, but I did want to just point that out. Now, taking a look at the left side of both phones, you can see that both have the slot for the microSD card and SIM card. Then on the right, both devices have the volume button and then the power button. Then up top, both phones have the noise canceling microphone. And then on the bottom, with both phones, we're getting the speaker, USB-C port for charging and data transfer, microphone, and 3.5mm headphone jack. Now one difference though, is that with the Moto G Power, you are getting stereo speakers. So you're getting audio that comes out of both the speaker on the bottom and also out of the earpiece up top. Whereas with the A21, the audio just comes out of the bottom speaker and that's it. So you are going to be able to get a much better audio listening experience with the Moto G Power, as the speakers will be considerably louder. Another thing too, on the back side of the devices, you can see that we do have a generally pretty similar setup here. Both phones do have a glossy back on them. They both have the camera module and fingerprint sensor. Let's now do a speed test comparison between these two phones. So we're going to start by going to the camera app on both. So 1, 2, 3, go. And it looks like the A21 was a little bit quicker at pulling up the camera. Let's now go to Google Chrome. 1, 2, 3, go. And it looks like it was about a tie here with both phones. Let's now go to yahoo.com. 1, 2, 3, go. And wow, again, it looks like pretty much a tie here, which is pretty interesting. Let's now go to engadget.com. 1, 2, 3, go. And it looks like it was pretty much a tie. Looks like the ad did pop up first on the Moto G Power, but in general, it was so close, it's really hard to declare a winner. Now, scrolling with both phones is pretty smooth. It does seem a bit smoother though with the Moto G Power, and that probably is due to it having more RAM and a more powerful processor. Let's now go to this article. 1, 2, 3, go. And it looks like the Moto G Power was quicker at pulling up the article. So again, like I mentioned, even though the benchmark scores for the Galaxy A21 are lower compared to the Moto G Power, the A21 is certainly still very usable and will get the job done, especially for basic tasks. But again, I would say over the long term, you should expect the Moto G Power to perform better. There's no doubt about it that having an extra gigabyte of RAM and the Qualcomm Snapdragon 665 does make a very big difference. And then also, with this phone having a bigger battery at 5,000 milliamp hours, battery degradation, which is inevitable by the way, it will happen over time, will be a lot less noticeable with the Moto G Power compared to the A21. So I feel like this phone will easily last you 2 years, whereas this phone might not. So let me know in the comment section below what you think about that. But this is my comparison between the Samsung Galaxy A21 versus the Motorola Moto G Power. Definitely let me know what you think in the comment section below, but I will see you in the next video.